Exposed, 12 spine-chilling Reddit stories of haunted terrors and sinister secrets. Revealed. Rebecca couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong in Willow Creek. As she tucked her son Jacob into bed, a chill slid down her spine. It was a peaceful suburb, where laughter echoed through tree-lined streets and every porch light flickered with warmth. But the silence bothered her, a low hum of dread buzzing just beneath the surface. That night, after another long shift at the diner, she settled into bed feeling an odd unease creep over her like a cold mist. She tried to ignore the rustling from the vacant lot next door, convincing herself it was just the wind. But with each night that passed, the sounds grew sharper, like whispers weaving through the air, taunting her. Jacob, once a bright, chipper child, started waking up terrified, gasping for breath with wide, haunted eyes. "I saw it, Mom," he would scream. "In the backyard." Heart racing, Rebecca frowned, eyes flitting around their home. Each creaking sound felt laced with menace. She considered the neighbor, Mr. Anderson, known to grin at her with an unsettling charm. That smile, was it a mask hiding something sinister? She couldn't shake the thought. Frustration pooled inside her when she turned to local authorities for help, poised to voice her fears. But the cop's dismissive smirk twisted her stomach. "Kids have wild imaginations," he said, waving away her concerns. "Nothing sinister here." The town felt like a tightly sealed jar, and Rebecca was the one left fumbling on the outside, unable to twist the lid off. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Deepening anxiety throbbed as she dove into the town's folklore, scouring dusty books and local gossip. Stories emerged, whispers of children disappearing, shadows reclaiming them in darkness. The others, those who returned, were never quite the same. It echoed like a ghostly lullaby in her ears. A malevolent spirit? It made her skin crawl, but the gnawing dread pushed her into uncharted depths of the town's past. Storm clouds brewed overhead the night Rebecca resolved to confront Mr. Anderson. Thunder boomed as she stepped onto their deck, heart hammering in her chest. But shadows flickered in ways they shouldn't, twisting through the trees like living nightmares. The air grew thick with foreboding, so palpable it felt nearly alive. Lightning cracked, illuminating the yard, and there stood Jacob frozen, eyes wide as he pointed toward the forest. "Mom, look!" he gasped. In the darkness, a figure loomed just beyond the tree-line, its grin a grotesque mimicry of Mr. Anderson's smile. The eyes glowed with a foreboding hunger, glinting with malice that sent shivers coursing through Rebecca's veins. She felt the ground shift beneath her, the weight of dread pressing her to the earth. How could she trust the shadows that surrounded her? Could it be that the monster was simply the facade of a friendly neighbor, or something darker lurking in this quaint town? She stood frozen, breath hitching, questioning if she had walked into the very grip of horror itself. What would happen next? Secrets long buried began to claw their way to the surface, and she braced herself for the worst. Rebecca's heart thundered within her chest, drowning out the crackling roar of the storm. The figure in the distance showed no signs of retreating, standing just beyond the trees with its smile stretching impossibly wide. Jacob squeezed her hand, his small fingers trembling as he whispered, "Mom, it's coming for us." She swallowed hard, the vision before her seeming to warp and pulse in rhythm with the growing storm. "Stay close to me, Jacob," she commanded, voice steady even as terror coiled within. The world felt unreal, every sound magnified: the rustling leaves, the distant howl of the wind, and the wicked laughter of something unseen. With each flash of lightning, the figure flickered. For a brief moment, the distorted features looked familiar. Shaking her head to clear the madness, she thrust her arm out protectively, urging Jacob back toward the house. Just then, a sharp crash of thunder erupted, louder than before, and she turned to race towards the door, panic igniting within her. But an overwhelming chill seeped into her bones, halting her stride. It was as if the shadow had drawn the warmth from the air itself, leaving nothing but a void. "Mom!" Jacob squealed, collapsing to the ground. She whirled around, horrified, to see her son's terrified face reflecting the unnerving glow of the figure. The eyes. "They want me." In that moment, Rebecca was consumed with a primal urge to protect. She knelt beside him, her fingers brushing through his hair while fighting the storm of panic raging inside her. "It's okay, buddy. We're gonna get inside," she whispered soothingly. But her voice faltered as she heard the laughter again, low and conspiratorial. The figure stepped toward them with slow, deliberate movements, its grin clawing at Rebecca's sanity. It was no longer just a neighbor's face rehearsed in shadow, it was something grotesque, something unspeakable. "Jacob, we need to go," she shouted, grabbing him under his arms and dragging him toward the house. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if they were wading through quicksand. She could almost feel the figure's breath on her neck, chilling her flesh, wrapping around her mind like a vice. But when they reached the doorstep, the door wouldn't budge. Her panic surged. The latch rattled, refusing to yield. She could feel it then, the malignant force pressing down on her, suffocating her resolve. The whispers from nearby shadows grew more pronounced, curling around her thoughts. "Rebecca, don't you remember?" The voice rose above the howling wind, smooth and slippery like oil. She turned back toward the threat, the grotesque face stretching ever closer, and the smile that promised everything but peace darkened her vision. I don't know you," she screamed, fury swelling in defiance. But even as she shouted, the figure tilted its head, twisting into an unsettling shape, revealing what seemed to be familiar features, faces she thought she'd buried deep within her memories. Suddenly, Jacob shrieked. Rebecca spun, and in the chaos of horror, she realized he was no longer beside her. The darkness stretched, swallowing him whole. "Jacob!" She screamed, but the sound was swallowed in the raging tempest surrounding her. Everything blackened around her, and she stumbled backward as she grasped for something, anything, to bring Jacob back to hold him tight against this nightmare. But silence. Then the whispers came again, lingering like a cruel melody on the wind. "Find him." He's lost. Rebecca stood alone on the threshold, knowing that nothing awaited her inside except unanswered questions and a desperation too deep to comprehend. She clenched her fists, heart racing. Somewhere in the depths of Willow Creek lay secrets connected to the boy she had to save. Would she uncover the truth before the shadows claimed them both? Or was this just the beginning of a darkness she couldn't escape? As she stepped forwards into the abyss, she knew one thing: she could not back down. The hunt began. The wind howled in a frenzy as Rebecca stepped into the dense shadows of her own yard. Light flickered wildly, illuminating the path ahead but casting monstrous shapes all around her. Each step felt like racing against time, an unseen enemy lurking just behind her, a predator in the dark. "Jacob!" She called again, her voice hoarse, the name echoing into the chaos. It felt meaningless, swallowed by the relentless storm. The trees creaked and groaned as if responding to her desperation, their twisted branches reaching out like grasping fingers. She pressed into the dark embrace of the night, scanning the twisted landscape for any sign of her son. Her breath came in shallow gasps, every moment heavier than the last. Amongst the shadows, fleeting shapes darted away, a flash of laughter, a whisper of her name, and then silence. This was not just a storm. It was a living thing, drumming her fears into a frenzy. Suddenly, the wicked laughter returned, a menacing sound that seemed familiar yet foreign. It danced through her mind, tugging at memories she could barely grasp, memories that bubbled to the surface like poison. "Who are you?" she yelled into the void. A cold chill wrapped around her, causing her to shiver. Was it fear or something more sinister? She felt its gaze on her, watching and waiting. She clutched her arms tightly, fighting against the urge to flee back inside, to drown in oblivion with the unanswered questions. Then, a flash caught her eye. In the distance, behind a cluster of trees, a flicker of light shone a beacon amid the storm. Her instincts kicked in, and she pushed forward, her heart racing in her chest like a drum signaling an impending doom. With each footfall, the shadows seemed to stretch and darken as if responding to her presence, bending reality itself around her. The wind screamed in protest, threatening to carry her away into its suffocating grip. But she couldn't stop. She wouldn't let them take Jacob. The light pulsed again, stronger this time, almost calling to her, coaxing her closer. As she neared the trees, the laughter turned into a cacophony. Hundreds of voices intertwined, rising and falling like a tide, each syllable laced with malice. "Rebecca, you forgot us." It struck her to the core. Faces flashed through her memory, lost ones, buried deep in past horrors. On the edges of her mind came flashes of Jacob's laughter, of summer days spent in innocence before the darkness came. "What do you want?" she shouted, but fear laced her words, twisting them into whispers. The light vanished, and with it, the laughter quieted, replaced by a deep, hollow silence. And then, a new sound emerged, soft, muffled cries weaving their way through the still air. Her heart turned to ice. "Jacob!" The word tore from her lips, desperate and raw. As if responding to her scream, the air shifted, becoming thick with menace. She turned towards the source of the cries, her legs moving on their own, dragging her closer to the unknown. The world narrowed, leaving only the cries and the looming shadows reaching out toward her, beckoning. Every brush of wind felt like icy fingers scraping against her skin, urging her on. She didn't want to look back. She didn't want to be swallowed by regret. The night pulsed around her, dark and hungry. And just when she thought she had discovered the way forward, from the tangled branches emerged a figure, a silhouette that was unsettlingly familiar. "I found you," it whispered, the voice slithering through the darkness. Rebecca's breath caught in her throat. She froze, terror clawing at her insides. "No, not you." But in the blink of an eye, everything changed. The laughter roared back, flooding her ears as she faced the familiar figure, the grotesque smile stretching in the flickering light. In that horrifying moment, with dread coiling tighter around her heart, she realized something terrifying. The shadows weren't just chasing Jacob. They were binding her to an unavoidable fate. "Run!" she finally screamed, as the night exploded with laughter, shadows swirling toward her in a frenzy. But as she turned to escape, she hadn't counted on the fractures of her own mind haunting her, sealing her fate as the storm raged on. What would she discover in the depths of that darkness? Would they finally be dragged into the past they both wanted to escape, or was there still hope to break free? She bolted away from the figure, her feet pounding against the wet ground. The laughter followed her, echoing through the trees like a relentless tide. Each step felt as if she was sinking deeper into quicksand. No escape, no sanctuary. The darkness wrapped around her tighter, constricting, suffocating. "Jacob!" she screamed again, her voice raw, throat burning with desperation. Every sound around her distorted into a twisted melody of mocking laughter and muted cries, like ghosts of the past clawing at her sanity. The air was thick now, pregnant with the weight of unseen eyes that stared. Rebecca turned sharply, glancing over her shoulder, but the familiar figure had vanished, lost among the shadows. Had it ever been there? Or was her mind betraying her again? Up ahead, the flickering light emerged once more, calling her with a siren's plea. She forced herself to run towards it, her breath short and frantic, praying it wasn't just another cruel trick. But a nagging doubt gurgled in her mind. What if she didn't want to go back? What if the light held answers she wasn't ready to face? The thrum of her pulse clashed with the wind as howling wails, drowning her thoughts in madness. A sharp pain shot through her side, and she stumbled, falling to her knees amid the damp grass. The chill seeped into her bones. She closed her eyes for a moment, searching for clarity, a thought that anchored her to reality. "Stay strong for him." The words came out like a whisper, slipping through her clenched jaws. Jacob. He needed her now more than ever. With a surge of adrenaline, she pushed herself back up, determined to reach that light, to face whatever horror lurked beyond. The cries were louder now, mingled with the wind. They were closer. She could smell the damp earth and a bitter tang fear steeped in the dark. As she angled towards the glimmer, she noticed movement at the corner of her eye. A fleeting shadow dashed between the trees, just ahead. Instinct took over, she sprinted after it, thinking, hoping it could lead her to Jacob. "Wait!" she shouted, fingers outstretched. The shadow paused briefly, then beckoned before disappearing into the dense underbrush. Rebecca's heart hammered against her rib cage. Could it be him? She pressed on, branches whipping at her face and arms, tearing at her clothing. Dark figures loomed close, shapes distorted and blurring her vision, yet she couldn't falter now. The cries had morphed into a chorus, a haunting lullaby that imbued terror and urgency in every note. "Jacob!" Her voice screamed into the void. It felt like a prayer, a plea to the darkness. She felt a glimmer of hope when she caught sight of the shadow again, waiting, as if it wanted her to get closer. Suddenly, the wind shifted, and with it came silence, an unnerving stillness that engulfed her like a shroud. She halted, panting heavily, her eyes scanning for movement. The laughter faded, replaced by echoes of her own heartbeat, then, a whisper brushed against her ear so soft, but freezing as it slithered down her spine. "Don't trust him." Her breath hitched. She spun around, searching, but there was nothing there. Sweat mixed with rain as it trickled down her back. Who was warning her? Why did it feel like the shadows were alive, breathing, scheming? In a heartbeat, the shadow returned, hovering just beyond the edge of her vision. It pointed toward the ominous trees, urging her to take a step forward. What lay ahead? Another deception? Or was it, at last, a way to save Jacob? Rebecca felt the ground tremble beneath her feet, the darkness swirling, ready to consume her once again. Every instinct screamed at her to run, yet curiosity and fear intertwined, holding her frozen. Another step, and what would she find now? The wind kicked up again, relentless and biting, a cold reminder that the storm hadn't eased and neither had her torment. She took a deep breath and stepped forward into the unknown, and as she did, the piercing laughter erupted again, this time directed at her. "You're too late." It shrieked, reverberating in her skull, a cacophony of terror that shattered her resolve. The question loomed, thick and suffocating: had she lost Jacob forever, or was it still possible to turn back time? As Rebecca stepped into the darkness, the world around her twisted. The trees were no longer just trees, they seemed to lean closer, their branches clawing at her like skeletal hands. Each gust of wind carried a different sound, a whisper here, a cry there, layering her surroundings with the weight of dread. Shadows danced at the edges of her vision, taunting her with phantoms, breathing life into every nightmare she had ever buried. "Don't be afraid," a voice drifted from the depths of the trees, smooth and sinister, lacing through the air like smoke. It was both inviting and menacing, wrapping around her heart with icy fingers. "Come closer. We're waiting for you." She shook her head, willing herself to stand firm. "Jacob." Her voice echoed, but silence answered, thick and heavy. The vibrant flicker of the light seemed to pulse, beckoning her, but doubt clouded her thoughts. Her instincts screamed at her, it was a lure, a trap. Yet, a part of her yearned for the hope it might bring. "Do I dare to step closer, or is it the beginning of my end?" she thought, heart pounding. She felt a stirring deep within, fear warring with a desperate hope. When she finally took another step, the ground beneath her feet trembled violently, sending shudders through her body. She stumbled back, losing her footing in the mud that had suddenly turned to sludge, but something caught her just in time. "Let me help you, Rebecca." The voice was softer now, almost gentle. A figure emerged, a face she recognized, yet did not want to acknowledge. The very fabric of her being screamed for her to recoil, yet she stood frozen, gripped by a magnetic pull. It was Jacob, or what wore his face. Panic surged through her, a visceral rush that clouded her thoughts. Was he a savior or a reflection of the darkness? She took a shaky breath. "You're not him. You're not real." His smile widened, too wide, the kind that belongs in nightmares. You're mistaken, Rebecca. I'm all that's real in this twisted world. And I've been waiting for you. The shadows around her thickened, constricting like a vice, peering from the corners as if they were alive, eager to swallow her whole. The memories flooded back, Jacob laughing, running, holding her close. Was he lost forever? Or had he become something worse? Run! The urgency cut through the sinister atmosphere, reverberating around her. A sharp voice, breaking the spell. But who shouted? The real Jacob? Or a trick meant to cast her into further disarray? Turn back, Rebecca. A series of whispers echoed, swirling like a tempest, merging with the laughter. You can't save him. You must save yourself. She staggered, the weight of indecision heavy on her shoulders. What should she do? The path behind her was cloaked in shadows, but the way forward was the very mouth of chaos. Was this Jacob, or some darker specter convincing her to walk into doom? Her breath came quick and shallow as the laughter crescendoed, filling the woods with a ghastly symphony. Embrace the fate. Join him. They chanted, their voices a mesh of seductive murmurs. In that moment, dispelled from the depths of her heart, she made the decision. She wouldn't be a pawn, she wouldn't succumb. I will find you, Jacob. I will save you, she shouted, her voice defiant, slicing through the din. The shadows writhed, recoiling as if hurt by her conviction. For a fleeting instant, silence returned. Then, laughter erupted around her, twisting her resolve. Too late, Rebecca. Your time is running out. With her heart racing, Rebecca turned her back on the illusion of Jacob and sprinted deeper into the blackened woods, a labyrinth of despair. But as she fled, she felt a pull harder than before. Something sinister was awakening. And for every step she took, the laughter intensified, warping into a maddening chant. Save him, lose yourself. Save him, lose yourself. Would she be able to overcome the darkness, or were the walls closing in on her too tightly to escape? And who was really waiting for her at the end of this path? Despair flooded her, an unfurling weakness, promising not just peril but a revelation that could folly her very existence. As she plunged deeper into the night, Rebecca realized something worse loomed ahead, a truth unraveling that could change everything. Rebecca's feet pounded against the damp earth, each step pulling her further into the depths of the impossible night. The sounds around her twisted into a cacophony of fear, and with every moment, the shadows threatened to devour her whole. She could still hear the echoes of Jacob's laughter, distorted by anticipation and malice. It clung to her like a cold sweat. Why won't you just come back to me? The voice taunted, slithering through the trees. An unholy chorus, calling her name, reverberated like a prayer to an unholy god. She ran faster, her lungs burning, but she couldn't outrun the memories. Suddenly, she stumbled over something, an object half buried in the mud. She squinted down, heart racing as she realized it was a child's toy, a rusted red truck with peeling paint. She recoiled, fingers trembling against it. Hadn't she seen this before? The nightmare raced through her mind, linking her to a past she thought she had escaped. A shrill laugh pierced the air, and she snatched the toy, clutching it like a talisman. It's just a toy. She shouted into the darkness, trying to block the creeping dread. But the shadows only thickened, folding in on her as she sprinted away, each heartbeat magnified in the silence that followed. As she darted deeper, the trees began to bend, warping into grotesque shapes. Some looked almost human, warning her with distorted faces. Their mouths moved, but their words were lost in the swirling chaos. She felt dizzy, every sense overwhelming, and the ground underfoot felt both unstable and alive, shifting in response to her desperation. Rebecca, the whisper rolled through the branches, floated with the fog, curling around her heart. She stumbled, momentarily distracted by the sound. Come home, no. She pressed her palms to her ears. You're not real. You can't pull me back. With a deep breath, she pressed on, desperate to silence the inner turmoil. A glimmer of silver caught her eye, a sliver of moonlight breaking through the canopy above. She raced towards it, hoping against hope it might lead her to freedom. But as she drew closer, the promise of light betrayed her. Instead of a clearing, she found herself at the edge of a dark pool, reflecting her wide, terrified eyes back at her. The water was unsettlingly still, the surface unbroken by even a hint of rippling. She hesitated, feeling the pull of the eerie place. Something lurked below, something that watched her from shadows cloaked in shadow. A figure in the water, familiar yet twisted, beckoned her with a slithering hand. It couldn't be Jacob. Not again. Embrace the darkness, the voice cooed, a melody of temptation threading through the haunting night. We can be together. Forever. Terror and longing grappled in her chest. But I have to save you. She screamed, voice cracking against the churning air. The shadows erupted in laughter, cruel and mocking, drowning out her desperation. Save him. Or save yourself, Rebecca. The weight of the choice pressed heavily on her as the water began to bubble and churn. Something dark loomed beneath, breaking the surface with a violent wrath, sending white caps crashing against the shore. The pool wasn't just a reflection, it was a portal, a gateway to an unknown fate. Rebecca stumbled back, fear coursing through her veins as she turned to flee, but something cold and sinewy wrapped around her ankle. She looked down, horror locking her in place as a shadowy tendril emerging from the depths began to pull her closer, toward the very thing she feared most. Help me. Jacob. She cried, struggling against the tightening grip, but deep down, she sensed something sinister was waiting for her, something that truly understood the depth of her despair. With a final, desperate lunging motion, she leaped backward, breaking free just as the shadows could pull her under. She fell, breathless, and gasped for air, staring at the ravenous pool that began to settle once again, the quiet a mocking lullaby. Heart pounding, she realized the truth. I can't run forever, I have to face it. Could she stand firm in the face of such darkness? As she turned to confront whatever awaited, a chilling breeze swept through the trees, carrying words not of Jacob, but of something darker, more ancient. Come home, Rebecca. The very ground beneath began to rumble, and the shadows thickened. What awaited her on the other side? In that moment, she knew, she was not just fleeing. She was being sought. And the hunt had only just begun. Rebecca's heart raced as she took in the pulsating shadows surrounding her. Each heartbeat echoed in her ears, merging with the low rumble from the ground. The wind howled, carrying her despair back to her, deeper, twisted like Jacob's laughter. Panic clawed at her throat as she battled the urge to flee again. Come home. The voice was clearer now, almost outside of her own mind, wrapping around her. It wasn't just Jacob, there were others, too, lost voices pleading with her. She steeled herself, inching forward, knowing the path she'd chosen was fraught with agony. She felt eyes on her. Shadows flitted in and out of sight, whispering promises of safety that felt more like lies. She gripped the rusty toy truck harder, feeling the jagged edges bite into her palm, a cruel reminder of the past. Why can't you just let me go? Her voice cracked, sounding weak even to her own ears. The forest shifted, branches twisting as if animated by a life of their own. The ground shook again, and she stumbled. At the edge of the pool, the surface rippled, and a figure rose, water shedding like rain from its form. It was a reflection of her, yet not distorted, grotesque, skin ashen and eyes hollow. Face your fears, Rebecca, it rasped, voice thick with malice. They are waiting for you. No. She shouted, stepping back. But something behind her loomed large, looming shadows pushing her closer to the dark water. I won tea. But with each desperate step back, the ground trembled in response, urging her towards the abyss. She felt reality blur, edges of the forest melting into a swirling haze. The distant laughter returned, merging with the dark water's beckoning. Rebecca, join us. Her resolve wavering, she could feel the tendrils of despair wrapping around her heart like a vice. Visions of her past flooded her mind, Jacob's haunting eyes, the promises made in the dark, the twisted games they played. "I will not." She half whispered, half screamed, but it felt like the shadows swallowed her words whole. Suddenly, from somewhere deep within her, a spark ignited a flicker of hope. No, a primal need to survive. Not again. She cried out, finally stepping away from the water's edge. As if electrified, the shadows recoiled for a moment, giving her a glimpse of freedom, a way out. She turned and sprinted, branches clawing at her as instinct kicked in. But as she dashed deeper into the forest, the trees began to warp again, their gnarled branches reaching down like bony fingers, coaxing her back. "You can't escape your past, Rebecca," they hissed with a chorus of whispers. She ran, heart pounding, breaths raspy. Every rustle made her jump, every soft thud felt like the breath of something sinister. Time was slipping, seconds becoming eternities as she pushed against her every instinct to look back, but something crashed through the brush. A shadow breaking free, darting toward her. She turned, stumbling as fear pushed her forward. It glimmered in the moonlight, reflecting her terror, a figure, cloaked, with grotesque features, eerily familiar. "Why did you leave me?" Jacob's voice coiled around her, sweet yet venomous. "No, no, I'm free," she yelled, but it sounded pathetic. The figure lunged, and Rebecca spun, barely catching her balance as the world around her tilted dangerously. She clenched her teeth, refusing to be pulled back into that darkness. "Find me," the words echoed, haunting her even as she fought to escape. She was losing ground with every frantic step, but the thought crossed her mind, what if she hadn't left everything behind? What if Jacob was right? The shadows gave chase, weaving into a single mass, tantalizing and malicious. "Don't run from your destiny." The ground shook again, the trees screaming, as she skidded to a halt at the edge of another clearing. A choice lay before her, but this one was greater. "Choose wisely, Rebecca." As the shadows loomed closer, she felt the weight of their presence suffocating. In that moment, she realized the hunt was not for Jacob anymore. It was for her soul. With adrenaline fueling her, she faced the unfolding horror. What remained out there, in the shadows, awaited her answer. And she could feel something inside her, something that had not yet given up. But would she find the strength to fight it, or would the darkness claim her once and for all? The shadows pressed in, their whispers now a cacophony of anguish and betrayal. Rebecca took a deep breath, the air thick with dread. Her mind raced, grappling with the chilling choice laid out before her. Behind her, she felt Jacob's presence, the tortured remnants of their past leaking through the void, taunting her. Time crawled, each second stretching into a lifetime. The clearing appeared more chaotic now, swirling shadows danced around tall, twisted trees, and the ground writhed as if alive. "Choose," echoed the voices, a chorus of desperation and malice. At the center, two paths diverged. One whispered promises of safety and solace, the other echoed with screams of sorrow and darkness. Her heart pounded, instincts clashing with the desperate desire for freedom. "This is just a trick," she muttered, teeth clenched. The shadows tightened, sensing her hesitation, their laughter intensifying in response. Suddenly, the figure lurching towards her, the familiar outline cloaked in darkness, grew closer. The grotesque features molded into something more human, twisting as it approached. "You can't outrun me, Rebecca. I am always with you." Jacob's voice maintained that sweet venom, slithering into her ear. "Join me." "No," she shouted, defiance flaring in her chest like a wildfire. The instinct to flee warred against the pull of the abyss. She stepped towards the left path, the one riddled with hope, despite its treacherous glow. Just as she took that first step, a coldness clutched at her heart. The air became frigid, and an unseen force pulled her back, trying to drag her towards the right. "You think you can escape what you are? You're mine." The sensation was choking, suffocating, as though 10,000 icy fingers clawed at her skin. Desperation ignited her resolve. "I will not be your puppet." She leaped forward, pushing against the freezing wind that howled around her. The earth bucked beneath her feet, the shadows shuddering as they struggled to claim her. She ran, heart pounding, blood roaring in her ears. The path opened into another clearing, one drenched in an unsettling moonlight. Here, the air shimmered like a thin veil, and shadows writhed like smoke. In the center stood an ancient altar, stones rising from the ground like teeth, jagged and menacing. A vision sparked in her mind, memories washing over her like a deluge. The games they played, the dark rituals Jacob conjured in the dead of night. A chill coursed through her when realization struck. "Rebecca, you need to remember." The whisper was gentle yet laced with dread, echoing between the twisted trees. "Remember what?" she gasped. Panic surged, pooling in her stomach. Her mind turned, flipping pages of darkness as she chased forgotten memories. Each felt like barbed wire, leaving painful impressions. Fingers of shadows clawed at her heels, relentless, as she reached the altar. The stone pulsed with energy, ancient and sinister. "You need to know the truth." It beckoned her closer, promising clarity amid the chaos. "What truth?" she yelled, fear almost palpable in her voice. The shadows shrieked, furious at her defiance, and the air grew electric, buzzing with an impending storm. The altar responded, illuminating her upturned face with a glow. Images danced in the light, flashes of betrayal, agony, and untold secrets. Each slice of memory opened wounds she thought healed. Sweat dripped down her back as she stumbled, realization wrenching her gut. In that moment, she understood. It was never about escaping her past, it was about confronting it. The whirling shadows shrieked with rage as she closed her eyes, feeling the weight of their anger pressing down on her. "Face me, Rebecca." Jacob's voice echoed with desperation, a plea and a threat. Gripping the altar, she opened her eyes wide, the ancestral shadows swirling around her in a tornado of torment. "No more," she whispered fiercely. Light blossomed from within her, not the warmth of safety, but a blazing fire fueled by her very soul. When the shadows recoiled, a rift opened in the ground beneath her feet. It beckoned her closer, and with each pulse of light, she sensed freedom beyond the chaos. But as she shifted towards it, the shadows roared back, coalescing into a dark wave. "Choose, Rebecca, or we shall choose for you." Could she wield the power ignited within her? Or would she be lost again, swallowed by the remnants of a twisted love and past? In the heart of the storm, Rebecca stood ready, the choice echoing in her mind, as darkness clawed at her hope. What happened next would decide her fate. The world tilted, and for a moment, Rebecca felt suspended in time, the shadows swirling around her, beckoning her to surrender. Her heart raced as the darkness around her pulsed with a life of its own. She was teetering on the edge of a chasm, one path leading to a fate she could hardly comprehend, the other drawn by shadows richer than her worst nightmares. The rift below her shifted, a swirling void that promised both escape and peril. It was intoxicating. She could feel the heat of the light within her, battling against the icy grip of despair that wrapped around her like chains. "Please choose," the altar hissed, its voice twisting around her senses like silk and steel. With shaking hands, she gripped the altar tighter, feeling the rough stone cut into her palms. "I refuse," she shouted, each word resonating through the clearing like a thunderclap. "I want to let you decide for me." With the last of her strength, she drew on the light inside her, channeling everything she had ever been. She stepped forward, the shadows roiling around her with furious intensity. As she crossed the threshold of the rift, the ground beneath her cracked, a cacophony echoing her defiance. The shadows screamed, a chorus of fury and anguish that made her blood run cold. The light surged, engulfing her whole body, and for a split second, she felt invincible. But then, a rush of darkness exploded from the mouths of the void, and she stumbled back, caught in the storm of chaos. It was more than she could bear. Panic surged like fire racing through her veins, and her instincts screamed for her to flee. Suddenly, Jacob's face appeared within the shadows, grotesque and haunting, twisted by pain and rage. "You can't escape, Rebecca. I know what you fear most. You'll never find peace." His words were like knives, slicing through her courage. She faltered, the light dimming in her chest, and for a moment, doubt clouded her vision. The shadows coalesced around her again, pressing in with suffocating force, eager to drag her back to despair. She felt them tugging, relentless, their whispers now an anguished chant of her failures and her past, the visions twisted, each memory more vivid, each betrayal, each tear she had shed because of Jacob. "You were weak," they jeered, "you'll always be weak." A pulse of anger flared within her, shooting through the fog of despair. "No more. You don't own me," she roared, digging into the core of her being. The light shot out in a brilliant blaze, illuminating the clearing with blinding intensity. It pushed back the shadows, but they wailed and thrusted forward, a creature of malice unwilling to yield. As the light expanded, the altar trembled and the ground beneath it began to crack wider. Vibrations rumbled through her feet, violent and chaotic. She could feel herself splitting in two, the light and darkness fighting for control. The air around her heavy with tension suffocated her will. Then, in a moment that felt etched in eternity, all the shadows shrieked, melding into a tremendous wave that crashed toward her. She shut her eyes, swamped in darkness, feeling it claim her. "Choose, Rebecca!" screamed the voices, a mad cacophony that broke through the silence. But this time, she felt a different truth. She wasn't just facing the shadows, she was facing her fears. The realization rushed like water breaking through a dam. "I choose to fight." Suddenly, the rift widened beneath her, and with the resolve of a storm, she leaped forward into the unknown, the darkness trying to pull her back. As she fell, light and dark danced in a deadly waltz around her, and she screamed, a primal sound that echoed through the void. Would she land in the arms of freedom or find herself consumed by the shadows she fought so hard against? The rift closed around her, swallowing all sound, and for a heartbeat, everything faded into silence. What awaited her on the other side? Rebecca felt a jolt, the world spinning as she emerged from the depths of darkness into a brilliant light. For a fleeting moment, it was as if the chaos had unraveled, and she floated in a realm untouched by despair. But as her feet hit solid ground, clarity rushed back, piercing through the serenity. She staggered, blinking against the bright light, and as her vision adjusted, she found herself in an unfamiliar clearing. The air was sweet and different, filled with the scent of pine and wildflowers. For an instant, that stale, suffocating darkness receded behind her, like a distant nightmare fading in the morning light. But dread loomed. She sensed that whatever she had escaped was not entirely vanquished. "Jacob!" she called, a shaky note of hope and fear blending in her voice. But the echoes of her shout returned to her like whispers from the void. Where was he? Suddenly, shadows coiled at the edge of the clearing. They moved sluggishly, a sinister reminder of the horrors Rebecca had just fought through. Heart pounding, she scanned her surroundings for signs of Jacob or any escape from the dark. Pulling back, she took a hesitant step. Then, from behind the shadows, Jacob's familiar silhouette materialized. But the joyous reunion she craved twisted into panic. His eyes were wide, reflecting the swirling darkness behind him. "Mom, help me." The words came out strained, a thin layer of desperation lacing his voice. "They won't let me go." "No," she cried, her heart breaking as he extended his arms toward her. Faith surged inside her. This couldn't be the end. As the shadows crept closer, pulsating with malice, Rebecca propelled herself forward. "I'm coming, Jacob." With each step, she felt the shadows tugging at her, the weight of past failures, grief, and loss clinging like chains. But she pushed through. Adrenaline coursed through her veins, a primal instinct to protect her son igniting a fire within. "Stop!" she shouted, glaring into the shadows, defiance bobbing up like a buoy in a stormy sea. They recoiled, and she felt a glimmer of power surging through her chest. "You don't control me. You have no hold over my son, my past, or my choices. I choose life, I choose love." As those words erupted from her, the shadows shivered. With each syllable, light began to filter through, wrapping around her and lending strength. She felt the warmth flood her fingertips and spread through her arms. She was no longer just Rebecca, she was a mother, a fighter, a force of nature against the darkness. In a rush, she pushed toward Jacob, pulling him into her arms. The shadows screamed and recoiled, a tempest caught between light and dark. "We're getting out of here," she declared, the warmth of her love casting defeating light all around them. Jacob's grip tightened, and together they began to move forward, pushing through the veil of shadows that writhed in disdain. Light radiated from Rebecca, illuminating the path toward freedom as they raced deeper into that clearing, away from the horrors that had bound them for far too long. With each step, the shadows shrieked, their forms breaking apart, fading into wisps of smoke lost in the wind. And as Rebecca emerged from the shadows with Jacob safely at her side, dawn broke across the horizon, painting the sky with hues of gold and amber. "We did it, Mom," Jacob breathed, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and disbelief. "We did, buddy," she replied, tears spilling down her cheeks as joy collided with relief, flooding her heart until it brimmed over. "We're free." As the shadows receded into the past, Rebecca and Jacob stood together in their glowing sanctuary, breathing in the fresh beginnings painted across the sky. They were safe, they had faced the darkest corners of their memories and emerged into the light. They turned to each other, their bond reforged in fire and love, ready to face whatever lay ahead. "No more shadows," Rebecca whispered, knowing that while scars may remain, she would always battle for him, and together, they would build a brighter world. "Together," Jacob affirmed, his small hand fitting perfectly in hers, and as they began walking, the weight of fear lifted, replaced by hope. Now it was time for them to truly live. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, you know it matters. Flood the comments section below with your reactions and theories about this intense conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans know the importance of supporting the channel. Let us keep this community thriving.